Okay, we are now live. So, welcome to another edition of the Squeaky Chair interviews. Each interview is a look at the genius and madness of the creativity of each author to understand how they create their masterpiece. As always, I am Chris, or if you're more daring, you can call me Madcat. Today I'm joined with Mary Harner. Mary is a novelist, recently published her first book, Sandman. She is currently getting her master's degree in physics while working as a physics researcher. I met Mary through looking for people to interview, and she happened across my path. Ay, what? I'm in an interview right now. This is live. Oh, sorry, everyone. So unprofessional of me. All right. So, how are you doing today, Mary?
Pretty good, you?
It's been an interesting day for me. So how about you go ahead and start off with a little bit about yourself?
Alright, so like you said, I'm a physicist and a writer, which is never bored, plenty to do. I like to read, of course, and I do like to explore where I live. I live in Kansas, so there's plenty of exploring to be done. But really, between physics and writing, there's very little else a person gets to do. So.
Well, before we discuss your book and the writing process, I would like to find out a little bit more about your career as a physics researcher.
Right. What would you like to know?
What is a physics researcher?
So a physics researcher is usually also a student or a professor, unless they're working in industry, which is the goal. But I am a student, and I basically sit in a lab and do physics. For me, it is I have a laser, sort of. It's a black body source, but it's basically a laser that I put into a fiber, and then I cut the fiber to certain lengths, and then figure out how much light is lost while it travels through the fiber. And that's
Is
about.
that anything you do? Just measure fiber with lasers?
Well, that's my part. Then I'm in a lab with 8 other researchers, and the person I work most closely with is going to use those fibers to build a laser of her own that lasers at wavelengths that aren't very common right now.
All right. So, how do you balance the job of being a physics researcher and getting your master's degree? It sounds like it's kind of all inclusive. What you do for one helps with the other.
Right. So the research is mostly done during the summer. There is research ongoing through the semester, but a lot of research gets done during the summer. So during the school year, though, I do have to take coursework, and I do actually this semester I'm also teaching a course. So it is a rather delicate balancing act.
So, what what is teaching like for you?
It's fun. I'm a TA, so I don't have to do any of the lesson planning or anything. So I just get to do the fun part of standing in front of a class and telling students about physics. And I TA in a very interactive environment. So mostly they're just doing problems, and I'm helping them figure out how to do the physics and the math involved. But I like it. I think the teaching is fun, and it helps solidify those basic concepts that I sometimes forget.
Yeah, it's one thing I like to do myself. Wow, my hair is awful. It's one thing I like to do myself is teach other people about the fundamentals of writing. I actually have someone I teach directly about it, and I love that as I teach other people, it becomes more reinforced for myself when I later do it myself.
Mm-hmm.
So now I understand that you draw as well, and more than that, you are a cartoonist for the student paper. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, so I like to, I'm a very creative person. I like to do creative things. And I've always enjoyed drawing. Part of the reason I started writing was because I drew stories, and then the stories were just in my head, and then little scenes would get drawn on paper, and people were like, what is going on here? So I started writing it, and then I started writing stories. So the cartoons were sort of that happy medium between writing and drawing. But I've found that I much prefer to, if I'm going to write out a full novel, then I'm not very good at writing for drawing. But the school paper was editorial cartoons, and those are much, much easier than trying to write like a full comic or something.
Well, we actually have two viewers right now. Woo! World record for me, or personal record rather. But to our viewers, you are able to ask questions, and I may pull questions from there and ask our lovely guest today anything you want to know. So feel free to just load it up. Now, so what? So you did NaNoWriMo in 2010. What inspired you to do Nano in 2010?
2010, I was still working on my undergrad, and I had a light semester, and I just can't be satisfied with a light semester, so I was looking for something to do. And I'd heard about NaNoWriMo in previous years, and it seemed interesting, but I didn't have the time. So in 2010, I was like, I'll do it. I did my undergrad at a liberal arts university, which was all about well-roundedness. So it was sort of a way to get out of the math science world for a little bit and just do something completely different.
So I think I also read that you considered your 2000 Nano 2010 novel to be a failed novel. Was that correct?
Oh yeah.
What way was it a failure?
Well, it was a first attempt, and as NaNoWriMo will say, you have to suck a lot before you can start to be good. And that definitely lived up to that. There was zero planning. I am not a pantser, or I don't write by the seat of my pants, and that was a prime example of why not. But so I learned that, and now I write very detailed outlines.
Yeah, I consider myself a pantser. I do outline a bit here and there, but it's mostly in my head. The only thing I really do is world building, where I just kind of build the world around it, and then I build the characters themselves. But as far as the plot goes, I have a general idea of what I want to do, but I feel like I'm just putting my characters in an obstacle course, and as they pass one, I'm like, ooh, look, a pit with sharks and alligators.
Yeah, mine usually they still start as doodles in the margins of notes, or there's a lot of doodles on my thesis work right now. And then they turn into character sketches and then full-on outlines, although they do wander away from the outlines because that's the fun of it.
So you went from November 2010 with a failed novel to November 2011 in writing the first draft of Sandman. What
Mhm.
did you learn in that time?
I learned a lot about, well, I the First one I did was my first time ever really trying to write a novel for reals. Before that, it was just the doodling, drawing, and stuff like that. So after doing that first NaNoWriMo, I was like, oh, this writing thing is pretty cool. So I looked into it. I didn't do a lot of writing myself, but I learned more about the community that exists and that you don't have to just sit down with a blank page and just stream of consciousness onto it. So I learned a lot of the things that go on around writing besides just the writing. And then I was much more prepared to try again the next year.
Yeah, speaking of Nano, it's coming up in a couple of weeks. Will you be
Is
doing anything for it, or?
Yes, I always do NaNoWriMo. I have so many first drafts chilling on my computer, just waiting to be edited. But yeah, I have my notebook right over there, and it's all full of all of the things for NaNoWriMo 2014.
Well, I'll need to add you to my list of friends when we get done with the interview.
Definitely.
I'm actually going to be doing Nano this year myself. I'm actually a little bit bummed right now. I'm trying to put on a smiley face, but I was doing Kickstarter and it just failed like right before this interview got started.
Mm.
Um, but I'm going to push myself to go forward because, well, I want to be a writer. You can't just
Nope.
stop every time you have failure. So I'm going to be using Nano to start my vampire series.
Nice.
I've already started it a little bit, so I'm kind of cheating, but I feel Nano's really going to be the push that gets me to writing it. So if I'm cheating a little bit, so what? I don't care. I need to write. I need to win, people. Stop harassing me. Sorry.
Being a rebel is awesome. We've got entire forums for it.
Well, I actually did it last year, and last year was the first time I was successful with it.
Hmm.
And, a lot of people have heard me tell this story, and, well, at this point it sounds like bragging, but I'm extremely proud of it. But Um, what surprised me with Nano last year was the first time I did it since my injury and my disability,
Hmm.
and I managed to complete it within 14 days. I wasn't even really trying to do that. It just ended up happening, and I'm like, you know what? If I can do this in 14 days, then I need to become an author.
Yes, I find that once you have an idea that is really like your brain cannot stop thinking about it, it can be really fun and you suddenly look up and you're like, oh, it's done. Time's not up. You can't even verify the count yet. Oh well. It's better to be that way than not finishing, I guess.
Well, I think the secret to Nano, and a lot of people try to like, oh, you need to do this, you need to do that, and I think the truth of it is you need to unlock um, what nano means for you and how to do nano and how to write. And once you can figure that out for yourself, nano becomes a lot easier to do. And
Mm-hmm.
you definitely look at what other people say about their experience of it and what they do, and kind of use this as your opportunity to learn how you go about writing. I mean, like what you were doing for 2010, you learn you're not a pantser. You can't just write off the seat of your pants. Me,
Mm-hmm.
I don't even wear pants. I mean, I make pants for myself. I mean, that's my preferred method of writing. I don't necessarily know what the next two chapters are going to be about, and that for me enhances my story a lot, but it's not the only way. So I
Mm-hmm.
know I'm preaching a little bit here, but for anyone watching, you want to do nano, just figure out what it is that makes you a good writer and do it.
Yeah, I love that about Nano. It's fair, and I love the community part of it. There's the forums and the real life stuff. My area doesn't have much of a real life Nano group, but I am in a real life writers group, and we're doing Nano together. But there's that great community, and those stats though, they can really get you going. Like if you see those little bars growing closer to that 50K, it's just that just want them just a little bit taller.
So we actually got a question in, and I was planning to ask this myself later, but I'll go ahead and take the question now. It comes from Kathleen McDonough. I can't pronounce that. I apologize for mispronouncing your name. Um, so she says, I have read Sandman and love it. Will you be writing a sequel? When and what will be your next novel?
So I do have a sequel for Sandman. Um, it's written, it's drafted, it's edited a little bit, but not nearly well enough to be thinking about publishing it. The one that I have that's next in line in my mind to be published is a science fiction, new adult science fiction novel that I've been working on this year. Um, but yeah, Sandman does have a sequel, uh, but it's not. It's not ready.
Okay, we'll be talking about Sandman in just a few minutes. I just wanted to go ahead and encourage people to ask questions. So, all right, so where are we?
Positive conditioning,
So,
man.
we were talking about your experience in writing. So, from 2011, it took you another 3 years to get it published. What were
Yes.
some of the delays that you encountered in taking your story and getting it published?
Uh, this little thing called college really sort of can butt its head in the way sometimes. There was also the part where I'm not very writerly in my professional world. Like the things I study are not writerly oriented. But so it took me a while to get the grammar and the rules of writing down. So it took me a very long time to edit Sandman because I was sort of learning the intricacies of writing fiction that you don't really learn that much in school unless you are really focused on writing. So it took me Sandman was quite a few drafts. I think about four of them were just trying to figure out the grammar of like quotation marks. Like you don't learn that in school. So there was a lot of and a lot of time spent wrestling with the concept of commas. Those were fun. So there was a lot of learning involved in Sandman.
Yeah, actually, most writers, even those who study at college, have a lot of difficulty with quotations such as quotes and commas. I think I messed that sentence up, but that is actually a very common problem people have. Even I have problems with that. That's why we have such a thing as professional editors. But yeah, you're not alone in that. I think part of the problem we have in trying to learn punctuation is that we have so many teachers throughout our lives that keep teaching us different things, even in college. That's supposed to be like the beacon of knowledge, and yet no two teachers can agree on something as simple as where to place a comma in a sentence. So,
Yeah, and it definitely is because it changes and it's different from place to place. Like, I've had a conversation at a bar that turned into an argument over Oxford commas and whether or not they are a good idea. So, and there's no real rule on it. Depending on who you ask, it just depends on like where they're from, what rules they were brought up with, how long ago they were in school, because the English grammar is just moving away from punctuation with computers. So yeah, it's definitely a very fluid thing, which is difficult for someone who's sort of mathy to sort of understand. It's like if math were that fluid, then nothing could get done.
well, back in my day, we went to bars to drink, not to discuss.
Well, there was drinking involved in the comma discussion.
Actually, one of the things that when I first became a writer that kind of surprised me as far as punctuation go was how many spaces to put after a period. Because all my
Right.
life I was taught you have to do two. But when I
Mm-hmm.
published my first book, which was back in 2012 before my injury, I gave it to a professional editor, and she was saying, well, you need to do one, not two. And I'm like, well, why is that? That's why I've always been taught. And she explained to me, Gabriel West, if anyone needs an editor, she's awesome. Small little plug there. Explained to me it's because of texting and social media that basically our world was just lazy and didn't want to put the extra space in. So then the rule got changed that it's now only one space. And it took me a while to train myself to do that.
Yeah, I've had this discussion as well. When I did Sandman, I had a content editor and a line editor. And it wasn't until I hit the line editor that she was like, why are there two spaces everywhere? You don't do this in print. And, but I've spoken to other people in other print writing type medium, and it really depends on if you're fiction writing or prep for magazines or newspapers. Like, different media have different rules, so you might take the spaces out if your publishing is primarily online. Is the rule I was taught. If it's primarily online, it's without the second space. But if you're in print, you're going to want the formatting to be different, and it's just so complicated.
Yeah, that was something else she explained to me as well, because for now I only do ebooks.
Mm-hmm.
And she was basically saying that space is on a premium with ebooks, especially when people like zoom up.
Right.
Having that extra space just really doesn't help things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So let's go ahead and talk about your book, Sandman. I know we talked about it a little bit already, but um, what is your book about, and what can you tell us that we can't see on your Amazon page?
All right. Well, the little bit that is on the Amazon page is that it's a YA fantasy. It's about a girl who basically goes on a quest to rescue her grandfather from the evil state. And she, along the way, she hones a talent that she's always had for magic. She meets a motley crew of adventurers who go along with her. I can't even remember what I put on the Amazon page now. I don't think the motley crew is on there. So her magic is with the sand, so she can control the sand by speaking with the spirits of the sand. And it's just the little quirk of my world is that their magic is basically just asking the spirits of different elements for favors, and anyone can do it, but people with a special talent for it can do it on command. So other people have to ask the spirits for favors, and people with a talent for it can order the spirits to do things. So in this world, they used to, all of the spirits would talk to humans, and over time, all of the spirits just got irritated with humans and stopped talking with them, except for sand. So that's what it's set in a desert. So there's plenty of sand spirits around, and yeah, so that's what the basic idea of the story is.
Yeah, I can definitely understand not wanting to talk to humans anymore. They're just kind of annoying.
And so some of the spirits were much more vicious when they left their communication with humans and others.
So and let me know if this is a spoiler in any way, because we definitely don't want that. But when people ask the spirits for favors to perform magical acts, is there something that they have to give in return, or is that kind of up to the spirit of saying, well, I could do it for you, but what are you going to do for me?
It depends largely on the spirit that they're talking to. But there was a agreement between humankind and sand spirit kind, basically, that they would help each other out. The spirits need humans to help them interact with the world. They don't have bodies or anything of their own, so if they want something done, they need humans' help. So the humans agree to help out the spirits, and the spirits agree to help out the humans. But it doesn't necessarily have to be the human asking for a favor.
So, given what you said before that you need to do a lot more outlining and planning,
Mm-hmm.
what kind of world building did you put into this story before you wrote it?
Oh, great deal. The doodles for this one started forever ago, like 2008, 2009, I think, is the first time I doodled Seraphina, the main character. So a lot of time, like from 2009-ish to 2011 or so, was just playing with the world. I was a little bit daunted about trying to take on a whole fantasy novel, like creating the full world myself and everything, and the full magical system. So I spent a lot more time planning for that than is strictly necessary or advisable. But yeah, there was a lot of work put into it. Mostly starting with Seraphina and spiraling out. So we got a character, she's got a magic power. How does the magic power fit in with the world? What are the rules for the magic? How do the rules affect the world, or how has the world affected the rules? And then just sort of spiral out until, like, for me, for Sandman, I know things about the world on, like, the other side of the world that nobody but me is ever going to know or want to know about. But I know about it because it just went a little crazy there.
Well, now that you said that I can't know about it, now I want to know about it more.
Let's see. So the other spirit types don't really get put into the story that much, except in a passing, um, just in a passing fashion. But I do know that, for instance, the water spirits were the second to last spirit talking to people. And when they stopped talking to people, they got very, very angry. And there were hurricanes all over the world and floods, and it was awful. And they almost wiped out entire civilizations until they decided that they were just above it all. And they still are very irritated with humans and give them trouble on ships and towns that are built too close to water and stuff like that. So I know things like that that have nothing to do with anything in Sandman.
Well, and that's actually something that I think all people who practice world building to the level that you do actually end up doing that. Because my current work in progress is about vampires, and I've looked a lot at lore for
Mm-hmm.
vampires throughout history for different cultures that had anything resembling a vampire.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of mapping out how this whole world looks as far as these different types of vampires and their different houses. And I'm like, so what's going on in America right now? Because this is 14th century, and the world at that time wasn't really aware that there was anything beyond the ocean. But
Mm-hmm.
then I decided, well, the vampires would. They would
Right.
know that there's something out there. And they may have even actually been there themselves because there are vampires there and cultures that have see them as gods.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, there's a lot of vampires in the Philippines, in Russia, in China. And even though my story takes place in France for now, hint, hint, I am mapping out where everything else is because, yeah, I don't foresee going to America in the 1300s, but I could. That
Mm-hmm.
could somehow sneak up in my story, and then I don't have to scramble last minute to figure it out. But mostly it's probably just going to be something like I know it's there, but no one else will know since they only have my stories.
Right. And I think that the having the extended world is helpful when it comes to building a sequel, especially. I do know that in the sequel for Sandman, it does sort of delve into some of the other spirits in the world, and I have a very firm grasp on what those other spirits are like and stuff like that. So it does help much less planning necessarily needs to be done because the world exists now.
So the little bit that I've gotten from your book, I do hope to read it one of these days. I'm just really bad at reading books.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it appears that you have concepts of overreaching government, elitism, oppression, revolution. What are you hoping that people take from this book when they finish reading it?
I am not entirely sure. So there is definitely a big, overreaching government, a very, very evil government. I definitely think people need to question the governments maybe a little bit more, um, rather than just believing something from one source that irritates me. The scientist, it irritates me when people don't choose their sources wisely. Um, and I think that that's definitely something that a person could take away from this. Um, yeah, it's mostly just fantasy, but there are things just that I care about that manage to creep in every now and then, like the spirits of nature not liking people. That they have a reason for it, and it's because people are jerks to the environment. So that's a less overriding tone, but it's definitely there.
So, as a scientist, you have difficulty working with the realm of magic, dealing with elements that would contradict how science actually works.
Yeah, so I never call them, I don't think I call them elements in the story. I call them elements when I'm talking to people because that's just the word that we have for it. In the story, it's called lore, sand lore, instead of as an element because I just didn't want to do that. It's like
Typecast it.
then, hmm?
You didn't want to typecast it.
I didn't want to say the word element because when I read the word element, I'm like, oh, she can potassium bend? It's like, no, no, she cannot. So I don't want to have that word, but I think it may have sneaked in there because it is so, the thing that we associate with that sort of magic type is the word element.
So, any other aspects of your book that, like, you have your writer self and your scientist self just arguing? It's like, you can't do that. That doesn't make sense.
Well, I do try to keep things sciency. It wasn't so hard with the fantasy. Writing a sci-fi was a much bigger challenge because the, the science had to be right. It has to be right, and if it isn't, I will be sad. But with a fantasy, it's like if something is a little bit wrong, it's like, well, it's a different world. You know, physics is it's flexible in this world. But when it's in sci-fi, it's very. I spend too much time trying to explain how this doesn't break science, and then I have to take it all out. But it didn't happen as badly with the fantasy.
No, I do have that problem myself with science fiction. I actually prefer doing science fiction over fantasy. The only reason why I'm doing fantasy now is that my inner writer self keeps screaming at me, write the damn story already. Like, okay, okay, I'll do fantasy. But I do get that problem a lot, especially with my friends that know more about science than I do. They're like, this doesn't make sense. You can't do this. And it's like, it's science fiction. Just give me a little flexibility here. It doesn't have to be 100% correct. It's like, yes, it does. It has to be 100% correct. You can't do this. I'm like, it's fiction. The science is mostly right. Just give me faster than light travel, okay?
Yeah, yeah. I had to put mine in the far-flung future to make any of the technology believable for me. I was like, this isn't really going to happen, but we're going to say that it can happen far in the future.
So, your current work in progress is abnormal. What can you tell us about that?
So it's a sci-fi novel. Um, it's about two main characters. Um, a man named Joe who has been mischaracterized as low intellect. So in this society, they have people at birth are given a test and like a brain scan type test, and they're separated into intelligence levels based on what the test finds out. And the different intelligence levels decide what jobs they'll have in their society. And smarter people have, they get more things, more benefits, and then the lower intelligences don't. So the one character, Joe, has been misplaced in the lowest rung of his society, and the other character is at the top of the ladder, and they both, from their opposite sides, uncover another government conspiracy and are trying to rectify it through the means that they have available to them, which, of course, they have to work together because there wouldn't be really a point to the story if they didn't. But yeah, so it's their two different takes on this world from the two different perspectives.
So your first book, Sandman, was about sand magic and government oppression, and then your second book is about social castes and government oppression. I'm starting to notice a theme here.
Yes. My Nano doesn't have any of that, but this year I was like, I should step up off that.
Hey, write what you know, or, well, as I do, just pretend I know what I'm writing about. Okay, so you've stated that your process starts with doodling before you make it into a story. Can you elaborate on that process?
Right. So I do not go anywhere without a sketchbook. I just draw all the time. Like I said, my notes for my thesis are full of completely irrelevant doodles. My coursework notebooks are full of irrelevant doodles. Everything in my life is just doodled all over. And sometimes it's just a character that pops into my head, and I'm like, oh, that's a cool character, but there isn't really a story that really goes with it. And then sometimes I'll get lucky and I'll doodle a character that really just captures my imagination. Like I know their whole story just while I'm doodling them, because it takes, while I'm doodling, I'm thinking of their stories. And so so then I have the story just building in my head. And when I get one character that just really just takes off, I have to start writing it. So I start the process of writing a character. I write character bios first, usually, and then with the sketch of the characters. And then I do the outline. And then while I'm doing the outline or around the outlining stage, I also start doodling important scenes that I'm very excited to write. And then I start writing. The first draft is my favorite part.
Tried to turn on doodling for Google Hangouts to start trying to draw since you were talking about it, but it doesn't want it to work right now, so. Damn you, Google, for making me look bad. Alright, so what are some of the tools and resources you use to write? You talked about having a sketch pad and notebook paper, but what other things do you use for your final product?
So I did Sandman through a publisher, a very small press publishing house that's just ebooks. So I didn't have to have too much of the nitty-gritty formatty stuff, or else it probably would still be sitting on my computer. But I use just good old-fashioned Microsoft Word and my notebooks for notes and stuff. But yeah, I'm not too exploratory when it comes to writing programs and stuff. I did try one, I can't remember, Scrivener. You get it for free if you win NaNoWriMo. So I gave it a try, but it was really great for like the writing, but then when I wanted to get it out to edit, it just didn't want to work with me. So I was like, never again.
Yeah, I know a lot of people that swear by Scrivener, and I've checked it out myself. It's nice, but the one program I use for writing is just Notepad. I just need a simple text editor, and the reason why, and not like Microsoft Office, is I find all of the bells and whistles to be too distracting. You know, it's like, oh, there's a green underline, I need to fix that. Oh, there's a misspelling here, I need to fix that. And it's like when I see all of these extra features, my mind easily gets distracted. So I need a pure writing environment that I don't know if something is misspelled. Well, I know it's misspelled because I'm a bad speller, but I don't know which words are misspelled. You know, I just need to
Mhm.
write.
Right. Yeah, I like having. Well, the problem is if I am writing alone and I notice a word is misspelled, I can't just let it go. And with Microsoft, I can just right click and get the right spelling and continue on. But if I were writing a notebook, I would just never ever move on. So I'd just be like, how do you spell schedule? How do you spell it? Like I would just stop right there.
All right, so something's going on with our camera right now, so I think it'll just focus on you. It's probably when I tried to do that doodle thing, it messed something up. So you're going to be on now, and I'm just going to be the voice off in the background.
I can see you, but it did just say that you weren't presenting or something.
Yeah, I was trying to fix some of those settings around. So, I mean, you seeing me is important. That's fine. But everyone else just wants to see you. So, you're the reason we're all here. And by we all, just you and me. Okay, so you talked about getting a publisher. What was your decision for going to a publisher and not doing independent writing? And what was some of the difficulties in finding a publisher? Did you go to a bunch of different ones, or did you get lucky on your first try?
So for me, the choice to use a publisher was pure laziness. So I'm capable with computers as scientists need to be, and I could probably figure out how to format things myself, but that takes a lot of time and effort. Like nobody has more respect for the formatters than I do. I don't want to figure it out, and I don't want to do it, and I didn't want to pay, and it hurts me to pay someone to do something I know very well I could do myself if I wasn't so lazy. So I wanted to find a publisher who would take care of that nonsense and let me just do the writing and stuff. And I was also still a little bit um, wary of my inability to spell or use proper grammar. So I also wanted to work with an editor, and for a college student, I didn't have enough money to hire one myself. So I was like, I bet a publisher would get on that. So I felt that I needed someone to just sort of help me through the process. So at first, I tried traditional querying for about a year, which is just sending out letters, a query letter, and whatever first pages, chapters, whatever, of the text to agents. And that came up with absolutely nothing. And I was impatient. So I was like, I want to try something different. So I went on Twitter, and on Twitter, they have these marvelous things called pitch parties, where you just put a Twitter length, 140 character description of your book, and agents and publishers can go through and request your material. And that way, you're not wasting your time querying people who aren't interested in you. Like, they've already shown an interest. They bump you to the top of their pile if you send it in correctly. And, you're connecting with someone. who you know is interested in what you have to offer and who knows what they're asking for. So with that, I did that in the fall slash Christmas break of last year. And just within a couple of months, I had a few people request material. And from that, I got a contract with my publisher. But yeah, I was very impatient. I was like, I don't have time to wait for these people via traditional querying. I was like, no thanks.
Well, who could blame you? I mean, with the job of firing laser beams, I mean, I'd want to get back to that as well. It's like, else can I shoot? I'm tired of shooting fabric. Can I shoot
Mm-hmm.
an apple? That would be fun. So, your contract with your publisher, was it one of those where they just agreed to publish your book, or did they give you an advance?
Oh, it was just publishing. It's a it's a fledgling publishing house. So what they basically do, they only have the ebook rights. So I can still shop it around if I want to find a paper publisher or something like that. Like all they have are the rights to the ebook, which I thought was nice. But so it's not, but like I said, it was the safety net that I wanted, and that's what they provided. It was I wanted to pay nothing. Like I know BookBaby and other sites will help you with editing and finding a cover artist and all of that. And I wanted to just sort of break even on that front. I was like, you can have the book and publish it for me and give me royalties, and I get the editing and the cover art and all of that stuff. I just didn't want to have to pay anything myself.
No, I'm hoping that once I get the first 5 books of my next work in progress out, the Dagar Legacy, that I can start looking into getting a publisher. I want to actually do a little bit of both, be ebook and traditional publishing.
Mm-hmm.
Some things I release just as an indie writer, other things I release as a traditional publisher, and then most other things I kind of release as both.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's really where the market is going now. If you want to be successful in this market, you really have to do both. But I think it's best to start off with one or the other. I will always say start off as an indie writer, but to each their own on that one. But start off with one, build your fan base, and then go to the other side.
Right. Yeah, I very much want print. Like that is my goal. My next goal is to get published with print instead of just ebook. Although I would still want the ebook to be published. I would very much like if books in general would go towards the same direction that like music records are. If you buy a vinyl record, you get a download code for the digital music, and I think it would be really great if we could do that with books. But I very much want to have a print and electronic option for my
Well,
books.
generally you can. They are setting it up like that where you can, like if you actually buy the book, you'll get the ebook for free.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the specific ways they're doing that, but I do know a couple of independent authors. I think it was Chuck Wendig who was doing something where it's like if you can show the receipt you got for buying his book, he would send you a copy of his ebook for free.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you didn't do that, Chuck, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that about you. Although everyone should visit his website anyways and ask about it. He's a fun guy. All right, so you talked a little bit about your next goal as far as getting a physical book and seeing it in a bookstore.
Mm-hmm.
What other milestones do you set for yourself? What goals do you want to accomplish? And how do you define success? How do you know it's like I've reached this point that means I'm successful?
Well, for me, the goals sort of build themselves. Like the first goal, of course, was my first nano. First goal, write 50,000 words. That happened. And then after that, I did it a couple times, and I was like, okay, this is going well. And my second goal was to fully, completely edit and write a full novel that I liked well enough to show to other people. So then I did that, and then with that in hand, the next obvious goal was to get a publishing situation going on. So I went and I got a publisher, and then when I got that, I realized just then is when I realized I'm not apparently a very forward-thinking, thinking ahead kind of person. That's when I realized, oh, my next goal is now to see something I've written in print instead of just ebooks. So I'm not sure what the next goal would be, but I'm very confident it will reveal itself when I get there.
So I want you to think for a moment. Think about a character. Now, this could be from your own writing, it could be from any book you've read, any movie you've seen, but pick one character that just kind of jumps out at you and tell us what you like about them, who they are, where they come from, and why do you like them?
Um, okay. So I will. Been talking about Sandman for so long, but I don't want to use Serafina. I think I've talked about her to death. Um, we'll go old school. We'll go Artemis Fowl from Artemis Fowl by Owen Colfer, my childhood favorite character.
Can you repeat
Um,
that book? I didn't hear it.
Artemis Fowl by Owen Colfer.
Okay.
That was my favorite book growing up. So my favorite thing about him is that it's very, very difficult to tell if he's the good guy or the bad guy, especially early in the series. And I very much like a character that you can't tell for sure if they're good or bad. And he's also a very clever character, and I very much like the clever characters that figure things out rather than just punching their way through. So yeah, it would be a smart, slightly villainous heroes.
Okay, so we're almost getting to the end here, which is amazing because usually these things last for 2 hours, but then every time I say that, they end up lasting for 2 hours. Um, so as a female writer, how do you get into the heads of your male characters? What ways do you try to portray them despite not being male yourself?
Well, I generally tend to start with the we're all human model of character writing, and assuming it is hard. The hardest thing for me is coming up with what they say to their guy friends, because I've had guy friends and I know how they talk to me, but I also have a little brother and I've overheard him and his friends talk, and I know that that's not how they talk when girls are around. So it's very difficult for me to write guys talking to guys, but coming up with the character themselves, I try to think about them the same way I would a female character as just a person. And I like to come up with, well, for any character, I come up with um, obviously what their main goal is, but also some subplots for them, and then some interest that may or may not make it into the story just to give them some depth for me. And generally, I find that that's usually not very gender specific. Um, Maybe I just don't write very bro guys or whatever. But I generally find that I just try to work from a we're all human perspective, and then um, ask guys around me. I'm just like, so is this how you would talk about this with guys, or am I just completely off base? But it does help having a little brother, though.
I do have that difficulty myself when writing women. I've been around women all my life. I've seen them interact with each other, seen them interact with me or other people, So when I write females, I just kind of think back to my experiences with them and think, how do they interact? But I definitely start with the basis that they are humans, and as humans, we all have basic needs, and that our quest to fulfill those needs often come with a price of either our humanity or just our energy in general, that sometimes we can't be the people we want to be because we're too busy or too tired doing what everyone expects us to do.
Hmm.
And I think that's true between men and women alike, that we are often at the service to other people's needs rather than our own, and it gets to us after a while.
Hmm. Yeah, I find I have just as much trouble writing a particularly bro-ish dude as I would have writing a particularly like sorority sister type of female character. Like there's types of people, both genders, that I'm just like, I know nothing about you. So I think it's more so just personality types that I just struggle to write, male or female.
I think my difficulty with writing males and females is writing anyone who's below the age of 20. I'm like self-conscious about whether or not I could ever write young adult, because I don't think I could write about, teenagers today. I have a vague sense of what they're like, but it's like I don't even know if I could get their lingo correct.
Yeah, right now, while I'm world building, I've been texting my little sister who's still in high school, and I've just been like, do people still say this? And then she says something to the effect of, you are so old, and then tells me whether or not what I'm using is correct high school lingo. But the internet can help. There are lots of high schoolers on the internet, and they talk an awful lot.
Yeah, I try to avoid them. It's the person that I'm mentoring right now.
Mm-hmm.
She's fairly young. She's 25, but she, is a generation after me because I'm 34. And talking to her is always so fascinating because I'm trying to get her to kind of break this habit when she's talking to me, so she can better apply it to her writing. But I don't care how she talks to anyone else. But then she'll just say something like, what did she say? She really likes the ship between two characters, SHIP, and I'm like, you like them on a boat? I don't understand. She's like, well, it's short for relationship. And I'm like, really? You need the shortness for ship? Because usually you try to go to the beginning of the word for shorting it, but this is the first time I've seen it go to the end of the word. She'll say
Wow.
things like, "Oh, that was totally taut." Well, I just did it there. She'll say it's taut, and I'm like, "What the hell is taut?" She's like, "Well, I mean totally." It's like, say totally. You're on a keyboard. I can understand if it's your phone, but she has a lot of fun with me because she keeps spouting these off, and I'm like looking at her all confused. I'm like, "What?" So it's like, I
Yes.
don't think I could write teenagers. I think I need a teenager just to write it for me.
Yeah, well, my sister is very, she'll help until she just, she'll get tired of making fun of me. But as long as she's making fun of me, she'll help out. But yeah, like those sorts of things are on like Tumblr is where the word chip is used in that sense most often. And I'm very big on the social medias, so I do run across that a lot.
So Kathleen has piped something in related to this.
Mm-hmm.
She says, also, once you get in the character, they start to write themselves. You might write something and then back it out because your character wouldn't say that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that's the most fun part when character design is that I know them so well. I sometimes wonder if I know them better than I know myself, and that
Yeah.
I know exactly how they would respond. And it was something I said on a Skype, because I'm part of a group now for other people wanting to do NaNoWriMo.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I admitted that I don't think most people could admit, but I just don't care anymore, is that I will sometimes role play my characters. I'll go into a place by myself or outside, and I'll start talking like my characters. I still use my own voice. I'm not crazy, but if someone were to look at me, it seemed like I'm talking to myself, but I'm just like, okay, I'm playing my character. And whether it's male or female, I'll play my character and like, okay, how would they react to this scene? How would they respond for dialogue?
Mhm.
And then as soon as I think of it, I have to run home because I don't use a tape recorder.
Right.
This is the other funny thing about me. If I tape record myself, I can't come up with anything. If I
Right.
turn it off, I come up with lots of ideas.
Your characters just don't like tape recorders. Yeah, I find that I do something somewhat similar. I like to write crossover fanfic with my characters into. So if I'm just working on character development, not world development, I will take the characters and put them into different stories, TV shows, books that I like, and just see how they react to plots that I have already seen played out. Like, um, I don't know, toss them in Game of Thrones and see how they react to getting stuck in a room with Joffrey or something. Something that I am very familiar with, that's fictional, and then just throw them into the mix and just be like, okay, what are you going to do about it? And then generally, I really get a sense of what the characters like because different characters will react differently to confronting Joffrey or getting put into put under the sorting hat at Hogwarts. Or I'm very nerdy, as I am demonstrating, but
Nerdy? Nah. I the I've seen nerds who write sex scenes in Harry Potter. I'm like, wow, that's just awful. No, that seems like a really good exercise to do because it forces you to really explore who characters are, and then you're just putting them into new environments. And I tend to avoid fan fiction in all honesty. I've done my own fair share of fan fiction. I used to do the Star Wars MMO, the Old Republic. I would
mm-hmm.
always write stories for my character, and I
Mm-hmm.
would help other writers do the same. And that's sort of fan fiction. One of the biggest troubles that I have with fan fiction is people try to force relationships to happen. And one of the ones that annoys me the most is in Kung Fu Panda. People are saying like, "Oh, Poe and Tigress are boyfriend and girlfriend." I'm like, "What's wrong with you? They're not in a relationship. They don't love each other. They just respect each other." It's like, well, it's just a story. It's like you're misunderstanding the story if you think they're together.
Yeah.
So that's one of my problems with fan fiction. I can appreciate it if you stay really true to the characters, but once you start trying to force things to happen, I just spend more time yelling at the pages.
Yes, my well, prior to writing for myself, I did enjoy fan fiction a great deal, but I have grown away from it. But I still like to use it as a playground for my characters.
No, I do really think that's a good way to go about it. Really exploring who your characters are. Um, I do something kind of similar to that. I don't really put them in fan fiction, but that I put them kind of like, okay, they walk into a bar. What do they do? You know,
Right.
do they want themselves to be known? Do they go to the bar or do they sit in the corner? What drink do they order and why?
Right.
And so I do little exercises like this where I put them in various places and say, how would they react to this situation based on what I know of them?
Yep.
Okay, someone just put a hi up. Unfortunately, I can't read their name because it's in a language that I can't read. So I apologize for not being able to say your name and hi back.
Hi.
All right, so what other things would you like to discuss while you have the floor?
Oh goodness. Um, I don't know. We've talked about everything I enjoy talking about. um, I have nothing for you.
So, well, Nano's coming up. What are you going to be doing for Nano?
I am taking it back to a straight YA urban fantasy. Um, I've been writing older characters, and I decided that I wanted to just go back to the YA because I really do like writing that age group because they don't have to have a job. And it's great to not have to explain why people are just blowing off their job. So I'm going back and I'm writing a YA. I recently read a book um, on, oh, no, I can't even plug it because I don't know the title for it. I read a book that was set in Chicago, and the person clearly lived in Chicago. It was really, you could see Chicago while you were reading it. And I've only been there to visit, but even I could tell where the person was in the story. I thought that was really fun. So I decided I was going to try and write a fantasy like that, where it's set in a place that I'm very, very familiar with, and all of the places are real, and it's just the fantasy element that's completely new. So I wanted to give that a try. So that's the fun new thing I'm working on this November.
Yeah, I've thought about doing stories from where I live, Arizona,
Mm-hmm.
and I actually have a little fear with that because it's like I know Arizona so well, but it's like I don't know if I can really express it in such a way to help other people understand it. And
Right.
I think it's just going to be one of those things that you've got to really focus on your descriptors, the smell, sound, tastes, and all of
Mm-hmm.
that. And I think I could do it if I really wanted to, but I feel like I could never really bring it the beauty of what I see to
Mm-hmm.
pages. I think
Right.
it would be underwhelming compared to what I see. Plus, I don't want people to oh, I just lost my train of thought. Okay.
Yeah, it's. I think it'll be more similar to science writing though, because in science writing you have to describe something that you know really, really well to people who may not know anything about it, and you have to sort of start at brick one and sort of build a picture. And I've been working on my thesis, so I've been working on my science writing, and I think it'll be interesting to like let those two get closer than I usually let them. I try to keep the two worlds separate, but
Would you like to hear about my nano?
yes, please.
Okay, so as I stated, it's basically going to be the first book in my series.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and in the first book, it's about a group of Templar knights. Now, this actually takes place during 1348.
Mm-hmm.
And I chose this date specifically is because it was when the second pandemic of the bubonic plague hit Europe. It actually hit in 1346, but I'm putting in 1348. But
Mm-hmm.
my use of the Templars is interesting, and as you can tell, I've done a lot of research into this,
Yeah.
done a lot of world building.
Mm-hmm.
But the Templars were disbanded in 1309
Mm-hmm.
after crimes of heresy by the King of France,
Mm-hmm.
which I explain how that's possible, although not in the first book, but throughout the series, I'll eventually get to explaining why that happened. There's actually a very specific, there's a very specific reason that it happened that is part of the series itself.
Mm-hmm.
So, so basically, there's no way that these characters could be Templar,
Mm-hmm.
but I've kind of explained around that, well, I'll just go ahead and give the long explanation real quick. Basically, the Templars. also hunted vampires, and that was
Mhm.
something that they kind of did on the side, but not a whole lot of people did it.
Mhm.
But one of the things they had was they had these families set up all across Europe that would raise children in how to hunt vampires. So that when they joined the Templars, because Templars didn't train anyone, it's like if you know how to fight, you can join us as a knight. If
Mhm.
not, then you can go to our church and pray for us. So they would be training all of their lives how to hunt vampires, and then when they joined the Templars, they would be Templar hunters, and
Mhm.
they couldn't officially hold any rank within the Templars as long as they were a hunter. And then with the fall of the Templars, most of these families just kind of disconnected themselves from the Templars
Mhm.
because of fear of being arrested and also tortured. But a
Mhm.
few remained, and they continue to raise their children and their children's children in how to hunt vampires, and that's where these characters are from. They
Mhm.
have the ideals of Templars, but they themselves are not Templars. So basically, they're dealing with vampires right now who have hit Europe and are spreading the plague.
Not very nice
And
of them.
what's up?
Not very nice thing to do.
No, but it also makes you wonder, why are they doing this? Isn't humans their food source? Why would they want to kill them at such a high rate?
Mhm.
And there is a reason for that, which will be explored in the book. But the second chapter of the book, which you can view online right now on my website, actually has them going to an isolated group of vampires who want nothing to do with other vampires, to kind of view them as being immature,
Mhm.
asking for their help. And in the second chapter, the main character, his name is Jacques, he's like, well, we found evidence that these vampires will come after you when they're done with us. And he was actually lying about this. He was told by the Pope to tell this lie. And basically, they're like, oh, well, if you have this evidence, then we need to see this evidence before we help you. So the first book is them trying to get some sort of evidence that says that the vampires plan to attack this group.
Hmm. Interesting. Definitely sounds like you've done a lot of the world building already.
Yeah, one of the things that I did new with this that I haven't done with any other book is on my hosting account, I set up a private wiki for myself, just like Wikipedia,
Right.
and started putting things in because I started finding that I had like 100 different notepad files with information, and I
Mhm.
started losing track of information. So now with it all loaded up and linked together, I can find stuff that I need.
Right. Yeah. I made a wiki for Sandman, although I made that one the public one. I like to use Pinterest for that sort of thing, like just brain dumping. I do that on my Pinterest.
Yeah, I dump everything into Dropbox. I just have like folders full of all of my marketing information, all of my plans, all of my stories that I have waiting to be written. I have like 20 stories just in folders of like, if I need something to write, I always have something to write.
Yep. Same here. Are you like so ready to start Nano? Because I am. I want it to be
Um,
November already.
I don't know if I'm necessarily excited because once again, because of my Kickstarter, I'm just kind of really bummed out right now that that wasn't successful, which would have helped me publish these books.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm looking forward to it because it's just an opportunity to write, but I don't really put a whole lot of hype into Nano
Mm,
because I'm more of a pantser that I'm just going to, once I start writing, I'm just going to write. I don't really, I know the sequence of events, but I don't know the specific details of how these things will happen. So
right.
the excitement will come when I start writing.
Yeah. I I've got all of my pre-writing done, and I'm just waiting, hate the waiting part. I love pre-writing. I like the first draft, but that little space in between, not my
Well, I
favorite.
have because I've been thinking about this story for like 4 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I have been writing little scenes here and there. It's like, oh, this is the whole role playing thing, and then writing down ideas. I'm like, oh, this is a really good conversation. I should get it. So I
Mm-hmm.
do have little snippets here and there that I'll probably be using, but I don't do a whole lot of outlining except everything that's in my head. But I have a really good focus on all my characters. And let
Mm-hmm.
me show you what my wall looks like right now once the light adjusts.
Oh,
Um, those pages right there
yeah.
are my 5 characters, and then there's some other notes on there. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like 2 pages put together.
Mm-hmm.
What I actually did, I wrote an article a few months ago on another person's website
Mm-hmm.
about using tarot cards to design complex secondary characters.
Right.
That's basically what those are, is my tarot spread and the results, and then writing a character bio based off of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I like keeping them on the wall because then I can still make additional notes, just write things up as I explore these characters.
Mm-hmm.
Even with that, I don't know them 100%. I won't know them until I write them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, mine is much less organized than that. I don't have a wall.
Well, I rearranged my room just so I could have a wall.
I don't even have a desk.
Yeah, I barely have that. Alright, so I think that does it for us. We managed to sneak in an hour and a half here,
Mm-hmm.
so kudos on that.
Mm-hmm.
So we have been chatting with Mary Harner. She is the author of Sandman, about a girl who can do sand magic and is trying to stop the oppressive government. So go ahead and buy a copy of it. Sounds very good, and well, she's a poor artist and a college student, so she must be very, very hungry right now.
I'm so
Go buy her
hungry.
book. What's up?
So hungry.
Yeah, go buy her book so she can get some ramen noodles. I
Yes.
thank you very much for this interview. I always enjoy doing interviews with authors, and I greatly enjoy your participation today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so, and I'll see everyone for Nano, and I'm sure if you find Mary on Twitter, she might add you on Nano.
Mm-hmm. Yes, follow me on Twitter, Tumblr, Facebook, Pinterest, the
And
internet.
that will be posted down below when you actually see this video on my website. Those who are viewing it live, if you look below, you'll probably just see your desk. So, all right. Oh, so Kathleen is saying goodbye. It was fun meeting you, learning how you wrote Sandman. Buy the book. Thank you, Kathleen. I couldn't say it better myself. All right. So, stop in broadcast.